as we're talking to it,
Yeah. So we're live and living coloured out, Brian. Easy for me to say. My name's Ash Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of Empiraa. We've been doing the Cut the Fluff series that helps focus on advisory and consulting on how to actually just effectively cut the fluff, bring in industry experts from different industries to help them become far more rounded in their skill set to expand their thinking and not just sit there and just do the usual, okay, we from point A to point B, like we've covered everything from, managing your tech costs, managing your reputation. And today we're focused very, very heavily on partnerships, and partnerships probably the biggest thing that you'll see everywhere. Like everyone on LinkedIn's always like, oh, we've joined a partner, we've got a partner here, we've got a partner here, we've got a partner here. But I wanted to bring in Brian Williams, who's the founder and CEO of Hockey Stick Advisory, who I think is probably the gold standard in this industry around it. And welcome, Brian. Thank you for coming along, man.
Thanks, Ash. Great to be here and look forward to sharing some tips and tricks in this lunchtime session today. So a bit of background about myself. I've been operating Hockey Stick for nearly 3 years now, which seems crazy to say. We're all about enabling partnership opportunities to fuel growth. And what that fluffy word means is how can companies or people grow with and through others? And like, how do you actually do that? I like what you said, Ash, is, the problem we solve is that despite good intentions, most partnerships are ineffective, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think for the purpose of this session, which we sort of want to get into details of like what role do partnerships have if you're a consultant, and either, a few things like, do they referrals, word of mouth? Is that what it looks like from partners or in your surrounding ecosystem? And happy to talk through examples which are working well for us and that absolutely kept us oversubscribed for the last few years. That's one thing. Yep. The other thing is like how to think about diversifying revenue streams, stop selling time and money, and what that looks like. I'll talk through a few good frameworks and as per the Cut the Fluff series, Ash, so we'll cut out, we'll debunk some myths and call out the BS around what doesn't work, right?
Yeah. Anyone that knows me, Cut the Fluff's probably the nicest way to, as there's some terms I was going to use, but it wasn't going to be past our test. So, but no, and that's probably a core value of ours of Empiraa is we want to effectively cut the BS, cut the fluff, and go straight to the core of the problem and solving problems. That's what we do. We enable consultants to have a strategic enablement platform that allows them to grow their clients and grow their businesses faster, have real time execution, and not use spreadsheets and all these antiquated tools that just don't go anywhere. And that's how sort of met Brian years ago, actually back in your Zero days, when you were heading up partnerships there. So I'd love to learn a bit about just and tell everyone about sort of why are you so passionate about partnerships? Because it's such a set and forget industry. I feel that it's actually sometimes it has a bit of a stigma. It's almost like low level sales. So I'd love to know, because like I said, I'm not blowing smoke or I'm not cutting the fluff. Like I think you're probably one of the best at what you do, because you actually learn how to monetize and how to commercialize partnerships versus sort of the old high five, hey, here's 20%, see you later. So I'd love to know why partnerships, why you're passionate about it, and what gets you up in the morning effectively around it.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. Well, I'll give you a bit of an origin story. You might not know about this one, Ash. So following university, I went overseas, headed to UK and Europe, as a lot of Aussies do, right? I ended up in some sales roles where I was working in Germany, Luxembourg, and the Middle East for 2.5, 3 years. And the purpose of these primarily was to fund more travel, right? And I was having a good time. I was at it in the 20s. But back in the day, it was raw, cold, outbound working with financial advisors, where there's a lot of expats to help generate meetings for them to fuel their diaries, right? And with high dreams of high commissions, no pay, just commissions only. I did it for a few years and really cut my teeth on this. So it took me about 18 months. I realized this is pretty shit, making 200 calls a day, trying to fill some diaries. I thought there's got to be a better way, right? So I went down this rabbit hole of building out referral strategies, reading all the books and ordered everything before Amazon on what it was, and then operationalize and build a program where for every client we worked with, we do an introduction call. We'd present a value proposition where we get 2 or 3 referrals from their connected colleagues. We'd work out a program for existing clients where we'd be able to get referrals, upsells, and drive more. We'd collaborate with others to run events. And I went from banging the phone all day long to having warm referrals, which are booked into meetings, and suddenly became the poster child of the companies that we're working with. It's like, how you're doing this without this model of, there's working, chatting to salespeople now today, like, 5% of people may answer the call from those models. And the models we're seeing today is that no surprises, partner deals close faster, they're bigger and stay longer. So I saw it back then. And in my time at Vend, a bit over a decade ago, before I got acquired by Lightspeed, I was supporting the portfolio there by bringing in more partners. So we didn't have to build more features. They'd be more successful, and then they would bring stuff back to us and create these win-win. So upon, leading the Xero's ecosystem for 5 years, I saw so many upcoming companies like, I want to partner with Xero. Can you sponsor our hair and beauty expo? Can you send an PM to every farming client tomorrow? Can you get your execs to join this? And so I just saw repeatedly, time and time again, despite good intentions, that companies and people who want to work with Xero were just nascent around it, right? And the gap I see is that you can do sales training today, you can do marketing degrees, and you can do a bazillion digital marketing degrees already do it. But like, where do you go and learn partnerships, right? So that's where I'm at today. And a few years in now, I think we're continuing to build momentum to sort of realize that opportunity around, like, what does great partnerships look like?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, because like I believe in partnerships and referral revenue, that type of stuff. Always have. I always thought, warmly, it's hell of a lot easier than picking up the phone, like I said, smashing the phone against yourself for 200 calls a day. Completely understand that. For me, I look at it and go, it's funny when I speak to consultants and advisory companies, they all say the same thing. Like, they've all got these, especially smaller ones, they've got this lumpy revenue model where they're just, and that's one of the things that we sort of help solve, is because we can flatten that out, because we can create recurring revenue for them.
Yeah.
But it's so funny that, like, they'll go to chambers of commerce, and then suddenly there's 65,000 consultants there at chambers of commerce and that sort of stuff. So it'd be really interesting to sort of say, like, the power of partnerships in sort of the consulting industry, and from what, because you sort of got this unique perspective that you've worked in accounting, consulting, and advisory through Xero, and then obviously what you're doing with tech companies and the HubSpot, Thermal, that type of stuff. So I'd be interested to see sort of your thoughts around that one.
Yeah, sure. I think I can answer it a few ways, Ash. So, I mean, firstly, your views and observations I agree with. Regardless of the ecosystem, you see companies build a business along the dependency of leads from certain tech provider or someone around it. And then where does business come from? Oh, it comes from Asana, from Sin7, from Xero, from Shopify. And then what happens when it dries up or slows up? What does it actually mean, right? And we're seeing a lot of the trends in market where companies are looking for support right along the customer journey, and there's more opportunities for more revenue for consultants because, post 2020, companies looking for efficiencies, and they actually looking for distribution through partners or service more to add more. And so how do they co-sell things around it, right? So I think to sort of set the scene on that one. In regarding the viewpoint around how do you actually, get acquisition across your ecosystem, I might sort of just share a few slides to talk to this one, Ash.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Something I prepared earlier, mate. So
sorry, you prepared earlier.
Yeah. So in terms of like what's actually sort of shifted in market of what that looks like, I think maybe other Ash in the background, if you could, I'll get you to drop in a link shortly. Wait up. I'll make sure I share the right screen here as we cut the fluff, Ash. Stand by. Here we go.
There we go. We just keep cutting away. We hit the bone.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah. So firstly, if you're not yet connected with Jay McBain, I encourage you to do so. He's a Canadian, lived down in Florida, and he's like the go-to guy in our industry. And this report that sort of came out just last year is that the industry reports and the analysts that they're seeing is that firstly, partners are offering more right along the journey for their intended audience to go there. So it's not a case of you just do solve one thing for more. So what this means for consultants is you can diversify and work along the supply chain to offer more continually, which would be increase average contract value, lifetime value for yourselves, and building that deep relationship with others who you're working alongside of. So that's the first thing.
Yep.
And what this moving towards is a partner ecosystem model. And this is how we've grown our own business today. And I'm going to sort of explain around what it actually means. So the previous model, what you mentioned to highlight is the transactional model, where you're saying like, all right, well, just give me my lead and I'll just do my bit. And then can you give me another lead? And I'll go to a chamber of commerce event, or anyone who's been to a Shopify event, there's just a bajillion people, BD people walking around and swimming around for leads, right? And that's the same at most conferences.
Even expos.
Yeah, right. The likes of HubSpot and Salesforce have got over-bloated channels because they've got too many partners, and so there's a race to the bottom on pricing. So it's an interesting time. In terms of how this has sort of moved towards is, we don't have the inbound model of now, and AI is just ruining everything in terms of the content diarrhea that's coming out. And so what this actually means is like, well, companies are sort of turning towards, who you can trust. So how do you work alongside those to be able to do that? And the way we think about it is this definition, which we talk about really heavily for ourselves. And it's just such a simple analogy to think about it. So if you're a consultant watching this right now, who's got access to the companies that you want to go after, your ICP, or are talking to them in those two ways? And I want to make this really on point, is that if it's not necessarily the big ecosystem or the big company, what it is, it's not necessarily the Atlassian, Xero, Shopify, HubSpot. If only AWS would send me a shitload of leads. It's not. It's the surrounding ones around it. So for us as a company, we do partnerships, right? So we partner closely with a sales organization who's got the same ICP. We have a tech recruiting company to do that, IT company, and another HubSpot company, because, we've all chatted and sort of get together and we say, well, hang on, well, in some cases, all four of us have worked with the same company, just providing different services. So for us, by partnering with them, I've 5x'd my sales team without spending $1 on the actual sales. So beyond actually teaching companies to do it, this is how we've sort of grown our own business. And I absolutely want to make sure that we build a business which we're also delivering, executing on the stuff we're sort of preaching out there as well in the consulting model. So that's a kind of shift that we're sort of seeing for what that looks like. And in terms of these buckets that sort of swim around here, you got to think about, who's got access to the actual decision makers. It could be, marketing team, the sales team, the customer support. And then the missing gap, which everyone continues to get wrong, is, why they would actually, want to work with you. Why? Like that's the thing, just time and time again of like, stop coffee meetings, stop beer meetings. Let's have a bullshit. Actually lead with like, hey, I might have an opportunity for you. I want to tell you about some events coming up. We've found some success. I want to share some tips and tricks. Like, change the narrative from a transactional one of expecting a fire hose of acquisition, referrals, word of mouth, and flip it to leading with, hey, what can I do for you in various aspects, and be the easiest part of work. And this is like business 101, which people have sort of seem to have gotten along the way.
It's actually funny, and it's funny you mentioned that, because like this week in particular, I put a post out about something, and I won't touch on it what it is, because it'll probably expose the people that and I don't want to necessarily do that. But one of the things was I asked for some help about a particular problem that we had, and people tag people and they introduce themselves. But once I actually said, hey, look, I just want to have a bit of a chat about the pain points at ... it was radio silence. So what it was effectively they're like, oh, well, if I can't sell to you, then I'm not going to want to talk to you. And to me, it was like, well, actually, I sort of pulled back a little bit and I went, oh, hang on a minute. Like, I've actually got some networks that I can potentially help you with. But I didn't say this in the email, but it was actually very funny how transactional sometimes consultants can be. Like, they're like, well, it's my IP, I'm not going to pass that over to you. But I was like, well, actually, just stop. Especially in Australia. I find in America it's vastly different. Americans are very, they like to help. They like to sort of get on the soapbox probably a little bit, but that's okay. That's fine. It's so they can, so they should. But I think sometimes in Australia we sort of get a bit insular about, oh, we've got a lead, or we can help. It's a really interesting business. And I think if we can expand their thinking a little bit, and also what I'm sort of leading to is when you're working with consultants, when you're a consultant, and then you can sort of bring other people into your ecosystem. If a founder that I know who's actually been very successful, he says he lives by the theory give, get, and it's worked out really well. So sometimes, yeah, you might not actually get dollars and cents initially, but the more you actually give, the greater it will come back. And I think that's where partnerships really work in that regards.
Yeah, but I'll probably just emphasize that you should be doing that with where a focused group who have access to your ICP, you can sort of help them win, right? Like you don't have to help people far and wide and be like, charitable, because as a consultant, you do have limited time and resources to do it. How far do you do it, right? Like it's always interesting at events. You see the community managers out taking photos and sharing on socials, having a great time, right? But if you've got a consultancy and advisory business, then how much of that can you do? What's the ROI on thinking through that? So, for us, remain really deeply focused, help go above and beyond to your moat with those who have connected with our ICP, and that's where we spend our time, energy, and effort. Every week, I'll get emails, inbox, LinkedIn stuff like, let's catch up for a coffee or a beer, and I always get back to people. I'm polite around it, but if I can't see if I can help them, that we've got a sort of mutual customer crossover and things as well to be able to do it, then I've got to remain focused, because being sporadic and far and wide is wasting your time.
And that's the key there. Like, and that's where I think sometimes partnerships can sort of have that little bit of a sort of not dirty word, but like if I'm a consultant and I am time poor, and then people are going, well, you should invest in partnerships and invest in, speaking to tech companies and building relationships with them. And then people are sitting there going, well, if I'm talking to HubSpot, let's talk about, like, for example, okay, you're meeting with a partnership manager, is probably one of 700 partnership managers globally or something crazy. But if you're meeting with, I don't know, like the partnership manager at Quilla, I'll just throw that one out there, that they can help you because they've got proposals, they can do this, but also too, then this is something I wanted to touch on. I think that a lot of consultants and advisors don't realize that a lot of these partnership programs with tech companies come with revenue. That there's actually revenue to unlock. So I'd love to expand a little bit about the conversation about, okay, partnering with software companies, tech companies. Talk about the referral programs and revenue programs, affiliate programs that they have, because a lot have affiliate programs, but they're sort of set and forget. But the real good ones can really sort of help you create additional incomes. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts and some ideas around that.
Yeah. So when I sort of started the business, I had a catch up with a guy called Paul Higgins, who are absolutely giving a shout out for.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he sort of said was like, how do you build $100,000 a month, right? And he's got this simple framework, which reach out to him to chat more around, like, well, what if 30 grand could come from a tech company, 30 grand comes from consulting, 20 grand comes from ongoing strategic, and maybe you help them hire someone and get 20 grand in recruiter fees. And the idea was to sort of say, you need to diversify your revenue streams to obviously de-risk, but if you can grow, whether it's referral, reseller, or affiliate, to do that, and that's money in for jam coming through, which grows over time, perpetual, which might pay for office space, holidays, staffing and stuff to go with it to build a foundational sort of business on, right? So I think it comes down to your revenue mix of what you're looking to solve. Because if you are a pure consultant, I was chatting to someone in Sydney just a few weeks ago. They're like, well, they've got a ceiling at like once they hit 3 or 4 clients for what they can be. But if you're working with service, tech companies where it has to be attractive, right? Like not the 5-10% or something that you can either build services revenue on top of and using their tools below, or reselling and then taking a significant margin of more mid-market enterprise thing, and that can actually be quite sizable to build a business under the risk. The catch on that as well is that I think it's really important to not put all your eggs in one basket. Like, oh, we're just a HubSpot agency.
Yep.
HubSpot's going through a change in motions where they've ended perpetual rev share, and I know a few companies were caught short, and they're going to have to react around it. But come back to Paul Higgins' simple model of like, how do you diversify your revenue streams and split that out without you being either hitting a ceiling or adding significant more people to be able to do that and not having to do all the heavy lifting, and something that we're continue to grow into and building out our capacity and bring it to life, to remove the ceiling.
Yeah, and that's a big one. Like, and I touched on this earlier about the lumpy revenue, and that seems to be a huge issue for a lot of consultants and advisory. So it's like it's funny because we speak to accountants that are moving into advisory, but the difference with obviously accounting versus advisory is obviously accounting is very compliance driven, and advisory is more like, oh well, it's a nice to have, or and then the customers are probably not as engaged as they are with tax compliance and all that sort of stuff, because at the end of the day, like, it can still be pretty theoretical unless you're actually nailing it. So one of the things that we have a conversation, and you and I have had a conversation about, is actually productizing your offering using tech. So like we've give us a couple of good examples of what ones that you've seen where they're partnered with tech companies, being able to productize their offering and go from there.
Yeah, so I know someone who's a Sana partner doing really well, who built out some services alongside for ongoing retainers, and now sort of co-selling with them alongside us. So they've built a business and got a growing business doing really well. I think historically HubSpot was the sort of golden example of how do you build along, but that's changed because we've got so many partners to go with that. We're rolling out productizing ourselves now to build a one-to-many offering, and we'll have more to share on that upcoming. To absolutely exactly what you said, Ash. We've had a conversation on this around how do we extend the value beyond we're primarily doing advisory and strategic work, and then from there, how do we provide ongoing support for the years ahead, right, to build a residual. So I think in two aspects. It's number one, it's can you build a productized service? And I'll say that deliberately. And if you're able to document that and get that going, then you can add staff to it. And I was listening to Hormozy recently with Stephen Bartlett, and I did a post earlier in the week around demonstrate it, delegate it, and then actually documenting along the way to sort of build out to that. And then the next one is like adding some tech layers in there as well, where there is a perpetual revenue share. A lot of the AI tools which are coming out are growing fast, but they're all aiming for network effects and virality, right? I think a good example of that, there's one called Gamma, which is for building slide decks, and they offer
yep.
Yeah, and they've got accelerated growth. Like, so Canva's got some tooling like it, but if you can basically just punch in what you want and it'll produce it for you. We've got a 30% perpetual revenue share, right? So if you get a bit of a push on something like that and roll it out pretty hard, then you're able to add some fat on the, onto your top line revenue without you doing all the work, if you sort of get the distribution right and sort of push it out. So I think that's a good example with those two lenses, thinking about it.
And it's actually interesting from a tech point of view, as a founder of a tech company, for distribution, and we always hear the customer acquisition costs is the term you always hear from investors, right? So what's your customer acquisition cost? And that can range from $50 to $10,000. Like, it just depends on your stage, what your product is, and that sort of stuff, right? But one of the greatest ways to drive CAC down, or cost customer acquisition, is through partnerships, and also too, then you don't need to have as many, you don't need your marketing to be as heavy. You don't need to, there's so many different things. But on the other side of it, like that perpetual revenue sharing with a consultant. So if I'm a consultant and I'm generating $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 a month from having my clients use my referrals and stuff through text. I mean, that we talk about raising the floor. I mean, that puts you into the second, third story.
Yeah, well, picture the model of working overseas, just banging the phone all day long, of how effective that is versus this model, right? So CAC reduces right down if anything as well. And then the other thing as well, which encourage everyone to do, if you're not already, is you got to build your credibility as a consultant on top of it. So when you come into the conversation where referrals might happen, someone's going to look you up, whether that's on Google, LinkedIn. Do you have testimonials on your website around to do that? So on our website, you'll see we go very hard at testimonials and got them sort of flowing there. And what we actually do, and it might be a good tip for some consultants, is I ask for them on Google and also on LinkedIn. So it splits our presence both ways. And I use testimonial.ia, which I pay like $30 a month, which brings them back into our website. We use HubSpot CMS to display those and push them out. And so the idea is that if they go looking for us, where referrals and opportunities come in, that we've got credibility and case studies and stuff to go with it to move people way down the funnel. So to your point, Ash, if you build those relationships and you get partnerships humming, and then it comes down to a case of, how can you help us based on others, and then what's it going to cost and how long to do it. So that'll help you close more deals, which means you don't have to go find as many deals to go with it.
Yeah, and I always liken partnerships or referrals like it's the barbecue test. Like you've got five people standing around the barbecue having a drink, because this is what Australia. And then someone goes, "Oh, how's your business going on?" And they go, "Oh, yeah, I've grown my business by X." And straight away the next question is, "How'd you do that?" And it'd be like, "Okay, well, we've been able to partner with ... and we've been able to get referrals from ... And then suddenly it's like, "Oh, well, actually," and in Australia, it'll always be like on Monday, it'd be a quick cheeky text or email. It'll be like, "Hey, can you just give me the intro to that person?" So I think that there is a difference between referrals and partnerships, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, referrals are a category of partnerships. Depends where you read. There's sort of 14 categories also, right? So I'd really look at like referrals, resellers, affiliates being common ones. You might have marketing and thought leaders where you're just kind of like associated alongside brand partnerships going through it. We've got some stats coming out. So it's a bit of a hot take that, most tech companies across the region are focusing on referral partnerships at the moment. So we'll have some more benchmark data coming out soon, which is exciting. No surprises. Most partnership managers, just as a role within a business for tech companies that we see, I think like 80% of them are focusing on how can they drive net new opportunities for their sales team or business from their partners. So that's like the core focus of most roles. It's like, hey, which partners can bring us to fill the top of the funnel? But I'll just come back to my point as well. It's like, if you're getting referrals going, you've absolutely got to flip the script, as you mentioned before, and work out like, how do you help people do that? The way that we think about that for companies we're working with is in terms of partner enablement is we're deploying mutual success plans. And, admittedly we're using Empiraa tooling to be able to do that. But also we're using that there's a few companies who are close to our ICP model as well we use that same mentality to have a monthly rolling call catch-ups or in-person catch-up. And what that involves is, I showed that infographic before around identifying people close alongside your ICP around you can do more, is that for a select few companies, every month we'll get together of like, what's going on your end, what's going on my end, who are you trying to work with at the moment, who are we trying to work with around it, and then we're working out like, how do we collaborate? How can we help each other win? Where can I help around it? And so this is not a beer or coffee catch up where with the veiled like, oh, let's have a catch up of like it's just a waste of everyone's time. It's actually
a selfie on LinkedIn and all that sort of.
Yeah, right. It's actually all right. Okay, well, we've both got commercial interests. We're running tight ships with low on time. We're looking to diversify, increase bigger clients, longer clients. You're an entrepreneur, you get to choose which 80 hours of the week you work, right? So like these are very purposeful and intentful meetings, and always opportunities come out the back of them. And, Ash, I think you recently introduced me to someone and, they're way down the funnel. They're qualified and vetted because you've got this external sales team that you're not paying for who are vetting for you and got their eyes and ears in market.
Yeah, and for me, it's. I also think I think this is something that a lot of people forget, that if you help someone, like my background was the hire industry, right? The construction hire industry. I did it for 15 years, that sort of stuff. And I remember when I first started, this is like National Hire way back when. And this is like the company's not even there anymore. Got bought by Coates. Completely irrelevant, but whatever. So what happened was when I first started there, I could not believe that that if someone would ring up the National Hire office and say, "Hey, look, can we get a 19-foot scissor lift?" Let's just say, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't have any." We never said no. But what we'd do is we'd have partnerships with all these other companies, and we'd be able to either pass the lead over, help our goal was always to help the client and to help the client solve the problem. Business to business is just commercialized business problem solving. That's all it is.
That's right.
That really stuck with me. I was like, oh, hang on a minute. Like, so we can sub hire from this company, or we can pass the lead over to them, and then they'll pass leads over to us because we have bigger equipment, that type of stuff. Because at the end of the day, the customer got looked after. And I think that if you can bring people into your ecosystem that are aligned, and that's what I wanted to touch on then, was sort of what's a good example of good partners and bad partners. And that was probably one of the things I wanted. That's where I was going with that, is like, what are good partners and what are bad partners? Because bad partners can do a lot of damage, and good partners can just absolutely enhance your brand and your business a lot. So yeah, I love to get a take on good versus bad.
Yeah. Firstly, I'll just say that the way we think about your point there is, who else can solve jobs to be done for your ideal customers if you can't deliver, and how do they sort of map the workflows along the customer journey? Like, we do this bit, but we don't do that. So who do we pass it forward? And down here, we don't do that, or we expand our offerings to do that. In terms of good and bad partners, you don't have to go far to sort of vet out who's the, you want to be working with A-class operators to go with that. So, how do they show up? What's their testimonials? What's their reviews? How they regard in the industry? You can see pretty clearly around it. And if you're serving pretty similar ICP, they're going to keep popping up at the same sort of events, or same sort of content on LinkedIn, serving a different thing. Exactly what your point sort of say, Ash, right? So one of Jamie Bain's points when I started the business and, spent time in Miami, he sort of said, well, where are your partners' watering holes? Like, what events are they going to? What, where are they showing up? Where are they speaking? What kind of content are they producing around it? And you can sort of put a bit of you can see how people show up and around the sort of vet of what that looks like. And if it's that transactional relationship, like, hey, I want this introduction, or can you do this? And you're like, who are you? You've done nothing. Like, you've only got so many hours in a day in contacts, and if your network's your net worth, then you need to spend time with those who are on the same journey, right?
Yep. So, and probably the big one for me is so if not so much for me, but like for consultants, sort of what's your top 3 tips for if I'm a consultant and I'm looking to go, you know what, this is actually, these two guys have got some good points. I haven't actually got any sort of footprint. My partnerships are pretty light on, that sort of stuff. So what's the sort of 3 sort of Brian's top tips on how to kick off your partnership journey?
Yeah, firstly, map out your ecosystem and the surrounding participants who do have access to or are talking to your ICP. And then, write down what you actually want from them. But then, most importantly, work out what you can offer them. And it doesn't have to be leads in return. I just really want to say that, right? Like, we've often got behind conferences and going on a speaking tour, and we do it very deliberately ourselves, because that we know if we're speaking, we get in front of access of large audiences. And so we become the easiest partner to work with. We have a rolling monthly sync with the organizers. We promote across socials. We get involved. We work out how else we can help. We help elevate the whole event for our brand and network. And then we get these keynote speaking opportunities to speak in front of big audiences. So how can you be the easiest partner to work with? And then, the last tip is like, how do you bring it to life? Well, have a regular sync with those where it makes sense. Build those mutual success plans, which is literally gets on both sides. And if you're able to leave value with the partners that you want to go after ongoing, then they are going to be having conversations ongoing, and they are going to be wanting to bring you in along the way. So continue to add value, and you've got an amplified, and that's how you get your ecosystem spinning faster, and you'll never be short of work.
Yeah, it's so true. And I definitely think having people aligned to the same value and because at the end of the day, your name is your brand, right? And I laugh at, I used to laugh like people, oh, it's my brand, it's my brand. And I sit there and go, oh, actually, you know what? Actually, it is quite interesting that like your brand is just a reputation. So I completely sort of, I think sometimes people overplay it, but that's okay. Like, oh, my brand is whatever. Um, Probably another real sort of point that I wanted to sort of have a chat with you while you're here. It was like, I mean, how do I measure if partnerships are actually working? Like, is it just I'm getting more meetings? Am I getting more revenue? Am I like because that's we live in an instant gratification world, right? So everything's all instant gratification. So, what's your sort of thoughts on how do you know if partnerships are working, and sort of what sort of level of patience should you attribute to building this?
Yeah, sure. Like if you're in a go-to-market motion, you look at like where's 100% of leads or business comes from, right? So then what does partnerships contribute towards your business today? Is it referrals, amplification, these sorts of things? The way we think about it is we do measure this. We use HubSpot and we use DataBox on top of because we use HubSpot for starters because we're tight asses and HubSpot's pricing's ruined, right? Anyway, so what we look at is two metrics, right? To answer your question is where do opportunities come from, or deals, as HubSpot calls it, and then where does closed business come from? They're often
Yep.
sometimes missing. Some might be getting a lot of referrals from someone, but they're crap ones that are startups. But then where do the meaty ones come from to do that? Then where does 100% of our revenue come from? Which ones are actually partner generated versus others? So I mean, for us, for business, we haven't had to do outbound today because we're living in market and we've built the ecosystem. We've got multiple touch points across our ecosystem, which contribute driving stuff down. Which doesn't always mean that a right fit or the timing for it. You got to be clear around which partners to nurture and which ones doesn't align or not delivering.
Yeah, and you should have your own set goals and internal metrics to do that, because I suppose every business is different and every consultancy. I suppose like consultants, if you're a single person or 2-person operation, you've only got say 60 to 120 hours a week to invest on it between the two of you. I mean, most people say 40, but it's not.
No.
It's just not 40 hours. And but yeah, you set up your own metrics. With obviously what you do, have you worked with consultants before as a marketing? Is it something that you guys, the Hockey Stick's looking to achieve, or are you looking more at tech-enabled businesses or tech?
Yeah, we have worked with a few consultant businesses around how do you actually bring this to life, and then we also deliver partner marketing services. So how do they get their message brand out there to be able to amplify it, to make sure that they can get their message right in market to their ICP.
Yep.
It's also a value add to the other consultants close to our ICP that we provide recommendations to help them bring it to life, because they're like, oh, I love you guys. You've helped us work out which one events to sponsor and how do we classify that? Where do we spend our time, energy, and effort? How do we sort of show up? Who else we do co-branded events with and things like that as well. And then they naturally talk about us highly in market, and we have regular catch-ups, and so we get opportunities back in a sense. So we're living the values of how we operate for those around us to amplify the values back to us. And from time to time, we do help consultants either establish like what does their partner ecosystem look like, how to do it, and then thirdly, like if they need partner marketing services, we do that for a bunch around us as well, who are also sort of watching how we sort of show up, and they're like, hey, can we do what you do? And we're like, yeah, we can deliver that too.
Awesome. And the last one, what's your biggest win so far, Brian? What's the one where Hockey Stick's actually done an incredible job of changing a business's partnership strategy and execution?
Yeah, so there's sort of two ways to do it. So I think the first one is for companies upcoming, we help establish their partnerships and get it going and be able to grow at 30 or 40% of revenues, a good win. Another one on the enterprise town is we got in, so the other part of our business is big companies where we get in, revise, update their partnership ecosystem approach and how does it come to life. We've had the partnerships firing more and delivering more than a direct sales team once we rebuilt the partner program, build the partner value proposition, deliver partner marketing services to get that going. So that's pretty exciting when it comes to life, right? Because when you talk to the next client, that's your next case study of what you're coming through, and it allows us to swim upstream to bigger clients and go deeper and for longer.
There's nothing better. The money part, yeah, is great, whatever, but there's actually nothing better than helping. I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous. Like a lot of people, we've tried to partner with a few companies that just were ill-fitting or whatever else. But when you're actually helping like another company that's working really well, you sit there and go, "Holy crap, that's good!" Like that's actually, yes, the money part's great. Revenue's coming in, but it actually feels pretty cool to create something that actually helps, and has that real sort of butterfly effect, because you're helping them, they're helping their client, which means that they're all sleeping better. They're all, it's just this incredible sort of butterfly effect. So, but no, Brian, that's awesome. That's just about us. We try to keep it tight and sharp. Where would the best place to find yourself and Hockey Stick Advisory?
Yeah, and you check out our website, exactly as you said, Ash, or on LinkedIn. I'm usually rambling about partnerships, best practices. So sort of show up there, or if not, at the sort of next event that we sort of go to. No surprises. We're very strategic around which events we go to and sort of contribute towards it. So yeah, I feel if this has been valuable for anyone, reach out, shoot me a note on LinkedIn. I'd love to know what's been of value, or what's the one thing that you're going to do after this. Beyond getting back to work and doing things, if you can nurture the right partnerships, it can be a real growth driver for you and set up your long-term success.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've engaged Brian. We've been able to bring on a lot of partners, and we're starting to really see some strong benefits from that. And also to the revenue side of it, the actual advocacy for other people for your product or services is just an amazing sort of, it's cool to get an email say, "Hey, look, so and so introduced us. Let's catch up because we've got an opportunity." I was like, "Okay, cool, perfect." So that's what you want. So thanks once again, Brian, for us. If you find us on Empiraa.com, EMPIRAA.com, on all the socials, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, as everybody is, so feel to reach out. But thanks once again, Brian. An amazing chat. We definitely cut the fluff, and looking forward to sort of seeing how partnership and near-bound strategies grow moving forward.
And yeah, Ash, always good to catch up, mate.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.